What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be having a deep look at the 3 barrel attachments that have a direct impact on our damage ranges, as well as bullet velocity values, to see which one of these is best. And some of you may be surprised to find that you're essentially wasting one of your attachment points by using the wrong barrel in the wrong situation. Now these 3 barrels that we're looking at today are going to be the gain twist barrel, which just gives us a straight bullet velocity boost. Then we have the long barrel, which gives us a straight damage range boost. And then finally, we have the reinforced barrel, which gives a mix. It does a little bit of both, but neither to the same degree as if you just use the gain twist or long barrel for one specific stat. Now, one common thing I seem to see posted a lot is focus heavily on bullet velocity because it's going to help with your hit detection. Your shots are actually going to register sooner, and therefore your gun is just going to feel that much better. However, as I learned back in Modern Warfare 3, and I have had direct contact with developers that have confirmed this to be the case and actually confirmed the values for me as well, it turns out in modern Call of Duty, it's not a pure projectile system. It's a hybrid between hit scan and simulated projectiles. And if you aren't familiar, hit scan means there is no travel time, no bullet drop to account for. Essentially, it's like your gun is just firing a laser beam out in that moment, and if that laser connects with a target, it will register a hit. If it doesn't, it will register a miss. Whereas once you get to the projectile ranges, now it starts accounting for that delay, that bullet travel time, that bullet drop. And in that case, you could technically be on target, but if they're running perpendicular to you, for instance, you may still end up missing that target. Unlike with Hitscan, where you just have to be on that character model in that moment. And the way they handle this hybrid system is they actually calculate your hit scan range based on your current bullet velocity. And the calculation for this is quite simple. You just take your bullet velocity, divide by 20, and that will give you your hit scan range for that weapon. And here's just a quick reference chart to share for you guys here, and this should also help you visualize it a little bit. Let's just say a gun has a bullet velocity of 700 meters per second. That means your hit scan range is 35 meters. And therefore, from 0 to 35 meters, hit detection-wise at least, your gun will perform exactly the same. There will be 0 travel time and 0 need to lead your target whatsoever. You just put your sight on target and pull the trigger and you'll get a hit all the same because it's literally hit scan within that range. So if you're at 34 meters and you fire a shot, there is no travel time, no need to account for any leading, nothing like that. Your shot will register exactly the same as if that player was literally touching you at point blank range. However, the moment you get to 36 meters, that's when you at least have to start accounting for that. Now, at 36 meters, you probably still won't really notice it, but as you stretch beyond that, it will become more and more noticeable that there is travel time and you do have to lead your targets a bit. And therefore, beyond that hit scan range, as you keep stretching out your range, your hit detection will also feel worse and worse the farther away that you get. So this is very important information to know when it comes to your attachment selection, because for many of the guns, their default bullet velocity and therefore default hit scan range is actually going to be long enough that the vast majority of gunfights that you ever find yourself in with that weapon, within 6v6 multiplayer at least, will fall within that hit scan range. And increasing your bullet velocity doesn't change anything within that hit scan range. All it does is it increases that hit scan range. And this is why I truly feel in many cases people are wasting an attachment slot by going for the pure bullet velocity barrel, because they think it's going to improve their hit detection in all situations, when really it's just extending the range at which it will improve your hit scan range and therefore your hit detection. So let's look at one example here. With the XM4, our bullet velocity is 750 meters per second by default, meaning our hit scan range is 37.5 meters. And that's just a little bit lower than our default 5-shot kill potential with the XM4. And this is what 37.5 meters looks like in game. And on one of the larger, more open maps like Rewind, I can absolutely picture many situations where I am going to be fighting beyond that range. But when you translate this over to many of the other maps and look at some of the common gunfights you'll find yourself in that are on the longer side for that map, you'll see that that gunfight is often within 37.5 meters. And therefore, in those situations, increasing your bullet velocity does nothing. And I think a good way to look at this is in the past with Call of Duty, we've often had a lot of long shot medals that you had to go for if you wanted your camo challenges. And on many 6v6 maps in Call of Duty, you really have to actively put yourself in very specific situations in order to consistently get those long shot medals. Which coincidentally, for assault rifles, that long shot distance is usually about 38 meters, which is right around that hit scan range of the XM4 by default. And so for the XM4 at least, for any gunfight that isn't awarding a long shot medal, any increase to your bullet velocity would have been useless in that fight. And I think for most people, most of the time, obviously playstyle does come into play here to a degree, but more often than not, if you look at the amount of long shot medals you get versus total kills that you get in a match, it's going to be a fairly small percentage unless you were actively trying to get those long shot medals. In fact, for many people, if they're just playing normally on a map, they won't see a single long shot medal that entire game. And therefore, if they were running the gain twist barrel, for instance, that gives us a really nice boost of velocity on assault rifles, at least at 40%, they were literally wasting that attachment slot. And that could have been better spent elsewhere. Now, at the same time, looking at this example with the XM4, it's also kind of pointless to be boosting our damage range if the majority of our gunfights are falling within that 37.5 meters, since within that range, it's always going to be a 5-shot kill to the body anyway. So in this case, if you find that you're not getting long shot medals with your typical playstyle with an XM4, for instance, it appears you're actually better off just staying away from the barrel attachments and probably spending that attachment slot elsewhere. That is, of course, unless you just want to be prepared for that odd situation here or there where you are taking that long range fight, which is totally fine. Just know that you could possibly be using another attachment that's going to be helping you more often than that. But that's just looking at one of the assault rifles. What about SMGs, for instance? We have access to the same barrels that have the same general effects, just the values are a little bit different with SMGs. But let's have a look at the Jackal PDW, and I selected this one because its bullet velocity is closest to average for SMGs at 530 meters per second, which gives us a hit scan range of 26.5 meters. Which is very noticeably closer, but then again, with an SMG, how often do you want to be challenging gunfights beyond that 26.5 meters? For me, I generally try to avoid it, especially with the SMGs in this game, because they do drop off pretty harshly when you get to that minimum damage range. Like with the Jackal, for instance, it's going to take you 7 shots to kill. However, in the odd situation, sure, I'll take that fight. I'll give it a shot. If I feel like I have the jump on the guy or he's not really paying attention to me, I may try to get the kill on him there. But the vast majority of my gunfights should be falling within that 26.5 meter range, which is also my 6-shot kill range. Now, in this case, though, when it comes to increasing our damage range with SMGs, this often does matter because our 4-shot kill range of the Jackal PDW, for instance, by default is just over 15 meters. Whereas with a long barrel, we can get that up to about 18 meters. And it's much more likely I'm going to be finding myself within that particular range window where it's making a big difference in a gunfight compared to a range beyond 26.5 meters. So at the end of it, it really just comes down to balancing the probability of you getting in a fight in a situation where that barrel is going to make a difference. And in my experience, at least, the odds are that long barrel is going to be helping me more often than the gain twist barrel with SMGs with how I tend to play it. In saying that though, if you want just a nice middle ground, you could of course go with the reinforced barrel. That's a solid barrel as well. It just gives you a nice boost to both of those values. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds and it's a nice safe choice. But essentially, I just wanted to lay all of this out for you guys so you understand how this hit scan versus bullet velocity system works so you can make some more informed choices. And I do want to be clear here, it might come off like I'm saying never use that gain twist barrel for the best possible bullet velocity, and that's not the case at all. People have different playstyles. For me, I'm generally trying to get closer to enemies. I'm trying to keep my gunfights in reasonably close quarter situations, and I often try to avoid taking those really long range fights. But you might play different. Maybe you are taking a lot of those really long range fights, and in that case, maybe you do want that boosted bullet velocity so your hit detection is feeling better for a longer distance. Additionally, obviously, if you're a Warzone player, you want to maximize your bullet velocity, always. And that's just because you're much more likely to get into those longer range fights where bullet velocity is going to play a big factor. Also, I would say with sniping, that's another exception here where even in 6v6, I'm generally going to want to try to boost my bullet velocity with sniping, just because I always want to limit situations where I have to lead the target or account for any sort of bullet drop or anything. I just want to be able to point and shoot at my target for the longest possible range, and that's what bullet velocity is going to give me. And there we go. That's going to wrap it up for today's video. Just wanted to make sure I was clearing up some misconceptions when it comes to damage ranges versus bullet velocity. At the end of the day, the choice is yours, but now I hope you are armed with a little more information so you can make better choices when it comes to your class setups. And with that, this is where I'm curious to hear from you guys in those comments down below. Out of these 3 barrels, which one is the one that you tend to lean to the most? And also, how do you feel about this hybrid hit scan versus projectile system? For me personally, I quite like it. I wish there were maybe a little more clear about how things worked in game, but I do like this because most gunfights fall within hit scan ranges for 6v6, and therefore you see a lot more consistency within those gunfights. Because bullet velocity isn't even a factor in those ones, and it really only becomes a factor when you stretch typically beyond the effective range of a gun. If you enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.